Game over. China's deadly scheme to attack 5 nations. In 2014, a sinister plan was set in motion by China, one that would leave the world trembling in fear. The plan involved attacking not 1, not 2, but a whopping 5 countries at the same time. And how did they plan on doing this, you ask? By building military islands smack dab in the middle of the South China Sea, inside the borders of other countries. Talk about audacity. These fake islands were not just your run-of-the-mill sand and palm trees type of deal. No, they had fully equipped ports, air bases, and anti-aircraft guns, all in preparation for the impending war that China seemed all too eager to start. And to make matters worse, China continued this brazen, land-grabbing tactic for 2 whole years, creating not just 1, not 2, but an unbelievable 7 of these islands in the borders of other countries, without even bothering to ask for permission. It's no wonder that the US Army experts are sweating bullets over the situation in the South China Sea. These islands, built without any respect for other countries' borders, have the potential to instigate World War III. And all of it can be traced back to the Chinese Communist Party and their reckless ambition to control these parts of the sea at any cost. So why is the South China Sea so important to the world? And why is China willing to risk starting a global conflict just to control it? Well, buckle up folks, because in this video, we're about to dive deep into the heart of the matter and uncover the truth behind China's power-hungry agenda. The South China Sea, a body of water so contested it's become the stuff of international headlines. China, a nation embroiled in territorial disputes, finds itself at odds with a dying dashed line: the islands of the South China Sea and China's claim to inherit territory. Chinese vessels have brazenly fanned out across the borders of neighboring countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia, while Japanese media reports Chinese Coast Guard ships entering territorial waters for 2 consecutive days. But before we delve into China's willingness to lock horns with multiple nations over the South China Sea, let's explore what makes this region such a hotly contested area. The South China Sea is a marginal sea bordered by an array of nations, including South China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, Malaysia, and Indonesia. It's believed to hold around 28 billion barrels of oil reserves, 266 trillion cubic feet of natural gas, and boasts 1/3 of the world's marine biodiversity, making it an ecological gem. Despite rapidly depleting fish stocks, it remains a vital trade route, with around $3.37 trillion worth of global trade passing through annually. The Strait of Malacca and the South China Sea form the main route to and from Pacific and Indian Ocean ports. The northward flow of oil and minerals and the southward flow of food and manufactured goods have made the South China Sea a hub for international trade. With China heavily dependent on oil imports to fuel its economy and industries, roughly 50% of its oil comes from the Middle East, much of which sails to the South China Sea. As the world's manufacturing hub, China's economic growth is driven by the export of manufactured goods through the South China Sea and into the global market. It's clear that the South China Sea is of immense importance to China, but does this mean that it belongs to them? The answer is far from straightforward, and the simmering tensions between nations only serve to further complicate matters. The battle for the South China Sea rages on as conflicting claims and tensions continue to rise between countries. While many countries abide by the international laws that define their territorial waters, China seems to be playing by a different set of rules. In 2014, China began its mission to build islands with military capabilities in the South China Sea, disregarding the borders of other countries and sparking fears of World War III. But what makes the South China Sea so important to China? Well, aside from being a marginal sea with abundant oil reserves, natural gas, and marine biodiversity, it is also a crucial trade route for the world, with trillions of dollars worth of global trade passing through it annually. China in particular heavily depends on the South China Sea for its economic growth and energy needs, with 50% of its oil imports coming from the Middle East through this route. However, while every country recognizes the law of the sea, which grants coastal states exclusive rights to their territorial waters and ease, China seems to be ignoring it altogether. While other countries have claimed their part of the South China Sea based on this law, China is claiming sovereignty over nearly the entire sea, ignoring the overlapping claims of Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and the Philippines. This has united these countries against China's claim, as tensions escalate and fears of military conflict grow. To attack neighboring countries, building military bases on artificial islands within their borders without permission, and essentially disregarding the international law that every other country recognizes. It's like the CCP is playing a game of Monopoly with the South China Sea, and they've decided to just make up their own rules. But the stakes are much higher than a board game. We're talking about billions of dollars worth of trade, vital natural resources, and the potential for a global conflict. So why is China willing to risk so much for this one area? And what will the rest of the world do in response to their aggressive actions? It's a complicated and dangerous situation, and one that has the potential to shape the future of international relations for years to come. Let me tell you a story about a disputed paradise in the South China Sea, where multiple countries are claiming ownership and tensions are high. It's like a game of musical chairs, but with islands, and the stakes are much higher. China's Communist Party has been playing its own tune, and it's one that has the other players on edge. To assert its claims, China has been building on previously unoccupied beaches, and more than 200 Chinese vessels are now anchored at Whitestone Reef, a disputed area in the South China Sea. These islands represent China's sovereignty over fishing, navigation, and exploitation, and this has led to confrontations with other countries in the region. To counteract China's moves, several countries have officially renamed the regions they claim. In 2012, the Philippine president signed an administrative order mandating that all government agencies use the name West Philippine Sea to refer to the parts of the South China Sea within the Philippines. Similarly, in 2017, Indonesia renamed the northern reaches of its exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea as the North Natuna Sea to assert its sovereignty. All the while, China is building its own islands in the South China Sea, and they're not just any islands. They're military islands, complete with military personnel, an airstrip, and even a missile system. Based on international law, these islands are within the Philippines' borders, so the Philippines decided to take China to the UN court in 2016. And the ruling from The Hague? It was in favor of the Philippines, stating that China had indeed encroached on their land, despite the international law stating that a country's exclusive economic zone extends only 200 nautical miles from its coast. China has drawn a mysterious 9-dash line around almost 90% of the sea, claiming it as their own. To make matters worse, the Chinese Communist Party has been building military islands on previously unoccupied beaches, ignoring international court rulings and issuing provocative notices about airspace restrictions. But that's not all, because there's a whole group of islands in the middle of the sea called the Spratly Islands that all countries are trying to claim. And even though a 2016 ruling stated that the islands are just rocks with no territorial rights, China has been using a sneaky strategy called the cabbage strategy to choke off supplies to foreign islands. It's a tense situation, and one that has the potential to boil over at any moment. Things are heating up in the South China Sea. China's aggressive tactics to claim foreign-controlled islands have put the US Navy on high alert as they strive to maintain peace and stability in the region. With their strong military presence, the US is a key player in this high-stakes game of chess, where the consequences could impact global trade, security, and access to resources. But as tensions rise, China seems to be breaking their promises and ignoring the rules set forth in previous agreements. Are they building on unoccupied reefs? Are they trying to expand their territorial claims? No one knows for sure, but one thing's for certain: China's actions have caused other nations in the region to bolster their own defense spending, and the world is watching with bated breath to see what will happen next. The stakes are high, and the outcome of this conflict could have far-reaching implications for international law and the balance of power in the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it informative, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates on this and other important global issues.